she's always encouraged all of us. I think because she didn't have much education and she had to go out and get a job at 14, and the only job you could do without any training was menial work. And so she encouraged all of us to go out, particularly the girls, go and get as much training as we possibly could, because you never know what the future held. You might have to get a job later. And so, no, she is very good, role model for all of us. And for the nieces, especially the nieces too. Oh, if Nana can do this, maybe I can. If Nana can do this, even she's sick, and, all against adversity, we all think, well, gosh, what's a few aches and pains?
Norma King, a well-known writer and historian in the Goldfields, was born in Kalgoorlie in 1922. Married to a miner, she's lived in various parts of the Goldfields for most of her life. A life member of the Fellowship of Writers of WA and a member and past president of the Eastern Goldfields Historical Society, she published books as well as tourism information booklets. Some of her recognised works are Nickel Country, Gold Country, Colourful Tales of the Western Australian Goldfields, The Waldeck Story and Daughters of Midas. As well as involvement with her family, research and writing, her talents are also in painting. A painstaking researcher, Norma King has provided material for television and radio programs and written many newspaper articles. Now, Norma King tells her story.
When I'm probably about a year old, we went to Victoria, the family, and then we came back briefly for the 1929 celebrations. That was our state was 100 years. I remember getting a medal at school, and then we lived in other places like Gwalia, all the north country towns, and followed my father around, of course, from my mother, while he was looking for gold. He was actually a violinist, but it was Depression time, so they had, his career was not very good. And anyway, then I married, a lot of children, came back to Kalgoorlie in about 45 years ago. Actually, it was longer. It was 36 years ago. I just remembered to her for a child's birthday. That's how old you remember. And I've lived in Kalgoorlie ever since. And I had the last two of my big family here. Actually had 10 children, and one died in Walloona at 2 days old, but I reared 9. It was pre-war, it was around wartime, so my first child was born. So then it was post-war, and there weren't a lot of things happening, so that, there wasn't a lot of consumer goods. And I had to learn to make a lot of things, especially during wartime. If you couldn't buy them, you'd make them. Like even toys one Christmas for the children, made them.
Save a little sugar, save a little tea, save a slice of bread each day, for that brings victory. Save a little sunshine, save a little cheer. Shout, we are not downhearted, for the whole darn world you're here. Don't grumble at your ration, to the butcher please be kind. If you can't get your sirloin at the joint that wags behind, save a little money if you got more than your whack, and save your love and kisses till the boys come marching back.
So actually, by the time in the 60s, they'd, were getting older. Well, it still wasn't what you call a high consumer, for people, things, but I learned to make clothes. It was possibly a struggle, always, just to feed and clothe them, but they all never went hungry, and I had to learn to sew, as I said, so that I made things often out of old things or bought material. So they were decently clad. And then they all did well here. They all went on, and I've got 3 engineers and a couple of trained nurses, and another girl who has talents in another field. She's a great organiser. And another one is a cartographer. And another boy who's still feeling his way. That's the baby, old baby. I had him when I was nearly 40.
Norma King's literary work did not occur by chance. Although she had always been interested in literature, fate brought her closer to writing.
1969, I was really ill. I developed a weird thing. It was sort of an arthritic complaint connected with skin disease called psoriasis. It was it wasn't known much about then. All I know is that my joints started to go wrong, my skin was breaking down, my skin was splitting, and that I had to wear gloves with grease, whatever. And so my hobbies that I did do, like knitting, sewing, I couldn't do anymore. So, and I had, at this particular stage, I had my leg in a caliper. Weird things were happening, and my muscles were affected. It was part of the immune system went wrong. So I've been so busy all my life, extremely busy, and I still had family around. But my baby then was two and a half. And I decided to do a family tree, and I started to get material. I never ever did the family tree. I ended up like gathering little, somebody would tell me something, oh, I must find out about that. The first two main stories that I learned that one of my brothers-in-law went with Canning on his last expedition on the Canning stock route when he was 18, and old Canning was, say, in his 70s, and he reopened the stock route. So that was a great adventure for my brother-in-law. He was 18, and they took camels up. I think it was about a 16-month journey there and back. They took camels, but they also drove sheep and that for meat, and it was very interesting. Well, then I remembered this day, I thought, well, he's never married. The story will die with him if I write it down for my children. It was all supposed to be these things for my family. And then there was another incident when I wrote to my mother-in-law and finding out dates, and she said, and like your husband's uncle who was speared by Aborigines up near in the Murchison. I thought, I must find out that story. And that led me onto this joy of research. These are the things that sort of led me on. Then somebody suggested I send one of these to the Countryman in West Australiana section, so I did. Got everyone accepted after that, and the nickel boom was on, and I realised that history was being made, and I decided I was gathering stuff, all newspaper cuttings and things, because it was awfully exciting here. Then you cut the excitement with a knife. It was really exciting, the share market boom and everything. There was always little secrets going around, and although I was at home, my big family were coming and going, and you'd hear things or whatever. So that's when I did say often that I wished I'd have been a man and I could have stood up in the bar at the palace where it was all happening and listened. But I mean, a woman then was not exactly accepted in the bar, and I wouldn't have spoken in front of me. And so in the end I heard Hammond Innes was coming here to write a book on the nickel boom, and I thought, I'm living here amongst it, and I know all about what's happening. And anyway, I wrote Nickel Country, Gold Country. He wrote Gold and Soak, a fictionalised thing based on, so we both got a book out of it. And that was my first book, and that was my beginning of writing.
Norma's own experiences as a woman in the goldfields was incorporated into her writing. Her stories range from the first arrivals and the first tribes to miners' wives, barmaids, entertainers, Japanese and French prostitutes, and those of other nationalities who established the well-known and notorious brothels in Hay Street, Kalgoorlie. The history of women on the goldfields was depicted in The Daughters of Midas.
Somebody suggested to me it would be a well worthwhile project because nothing had been done on the history of the women. So I'd already been gathering stuff on the prostitutes because I didn't want to do those in stories because I could see how Hay Street was developing, and in early and rather humorous, in a light-hearted way, rather humorous features in those early papers, like they would have headlines, Our Scarlet Stain, and that something bludges in the bagnios, all sort of old-fashioned words. They'd beginning it with a one sentence. Those were wonderful to quote. But anyway, I saved those, so I had that. And I'd seen some articles in an early newspaper about barmaids, plenty on the nursing, but I wanted more. And then I found about the women's suffrage movement here quite early, and how they called it the New Woman, and it was very interesting. I followed that through. I saw this word in the newspaper of 1895, the New Woman, and then I followed that. That brought another chapter, and I was amazed to find that through the women, through the women of the goldfields a lot, we were given the rights to vote very early. It developed into politics, and then I found out. This really delighted me that I was able to use one. On Lou Henry Hoover. President Hoover's wife. Nobody realised she'd come here with him. And I found a diary that she'd had in 1902 here. Wonderful stuff. That's what means I could quote. And letters that she'd written home from here. I was able to have one on Ladies of the Land, on Pastoralist Wives. I was able to get one on a real First Lady, and then one on women who were miners. They weren't miners' wives. They were the women who were better off here, and their social life. I was able to do a lot on the social life. And so I had a variety. The miners' wives, I found reminiscences in Batty's of Clara Saunders, who came from Southern Cross here to Kalgoorlie as a young woman and wrote down her memories, seeing the first gold that was brought from Kalgoorlie to Southern Cross on display, and her words for that. So I was really delighted in the end with the material I got, but it took a lot of work. And what I didn't realise, I found this was a one-off. It was really strange. I'd been going through Kalgoorlie miners, you know how you go through masses of stuff. Nothing on women, it was all male, you see. So women were usually ignored unless they were notorious or whatever. So this is where I had difficulty. And then I saw concealment of birth case in Kalgoorlie. And I thought, oh, women see. So I had a look, and they called in Dr. Margaret Corliss. Margaret, that's no male. So anyway, I thought, where did she come from? 95, you know. So I ended up looking, and all I could find a month later was Dr. Josiah Corliss, husband of Dr. Margaret Corliss, has been sent to Menzies, the first hospital doctor. So I thought, oh wow, wish I could find something about her. And 2 days later, believe it or not, I got a letter readdressed to me from the town council. Somebody had found my name in some tourist bureau and written across the letter, re Dr. Josiah Corliss and Dr. Margaret Corliss. Dear Mrs. King, what do you know about these two Canadian doctors? I was a fellow doing Canadian studies, and he had a lot of information about them. So he unselfishly gave me those, and then I followed up more, then I was knowing where to find them. So I did and then I found there was another doctor, a woman doctor here in 1903. So I had the woman doctors, you see. So I was able to get doctors, nurses, and a variety of women, which I wanted. So, and then I could see a theme coming in the book at the end, and then I rewrote the first couple of chapters to accommodate it. It was the advancement of women over those years, you see, up to about the First World War. But that was quite interesting, that book, and the Business and Professional Women have just reprinted it. They reckon it mustn't die.
Norma believes it was her living experiences as a child growing up in the goldfields that she incorporated into her writing.
For instance, I wrote about this first woman going to the bush from a town, and how she had to learn. Now, a lot of that was pulled from my own experience, because when I was a kid, and from words from my grandmother and my mother, when I was a kid, I realised now, it took me a long time to work this one out, it was Depression years, and that's why my father took us up to the bush to retreat old sands in old places, deserted old mining towns, etc. But we lived in terrible conditions when I look back. Tents and bough sheds and that sort of thing. I mean, you didn't go hungry or anything, but they weren't very good living conditions. But through some of those things, I think Dad took us back in time for them, but the way that cooking in a camp oven outside, or certain things. So, and I remember as I was writing, it was all coming to me, even memories of my grandmother saying, and I said, for instance, before she went to bed of a night, she had to learn to empty her shoes in case there was any spiders, centipedes or other creepy crawlies inside. And then this and that, she had to learn, I was saying what she had to learn to adapt, and they were things that, so that was good, because they were real experiences, you know. My fifth book has just come out, the 50-year history of the West Australian, the Royal Flying Doctor Service, Wings Over the Goldfields. The Daughters of Midas has just gone into its second edition, and the Waldeck Story has been reprinted, but the other two are out of print. I remember after I finished The Daughters of Midas, I said to my family, don't ever let me write another book, just remind me how painful it is. And then now I'm doing a 100-year history of the Kalgoorlie miner. That's what the paper, the newspaper. It's a big job. It'll see me right through. That'll be my last big job. It's got to come out on its 100th birthday, 1995 in September. It's got to be ready to be launched. So I'm busy all the time. And I could do more things, but her failing health and our family commitments and that.
Norma's talent is not only behind a typewriter, but working on canvas. Painting the history of the Goldfields and other towns has also occupied much of her time.
I thought there was a gap in my books because I fell in love with art, and I went to school for 3 years. 4 years. I did a 4-year painting course at Kalgoorlie College, probably one of the older students, but it didn't matter. And third year I was tickled pink because I got Painter of the Year that year, and I was sitting in the audience, and I know that when I get up I'm going to stagger a bit. My feet are stiffened, so I thought, how am I going to do this when they call my name and I've got to walk up there? So I remember I was wriggling my feet around, keeping them mobile, but it was really quite nice, you know. But no, I notice if I try to push art, I don't, you know, it's not good as when I'm relaxed and need to have time. Not as much time as I'd like, because I really enjoy it. And music, well, it's just listening to music. In spite of my father being a professional musician, I didn't learn anything. You know, it's just, so of course I like to have a nice sound system and all that sort of thing. And I like films because my father used to play for the silent pictures with the violin, and I remember seeing the first talkie. I can remember me seeing the first talkie, you know. I even remember the name. It was called Monte Carlo, and Jeanette MacDonald sang in it. And the voice coming off the screen, I remember, I was only a little girl, about 10, but I used to go to the films with my dad, see, and sit there and feel proud that he was over there playing the violin. And that didn't last very long, because then talkies came in. I'm getting older, and I promised the family I'd do my own reminiscences, I'd do my own story. A lot of people have said, your life has been, you're writing about other people, why don't you write about yourself? It's very hard though, and then I think to tell it all, there's some things you don't want to tell people. I mean, it's too personal or too painful or whatever. Then I realised that there's been so many fascinating incidents, or funny or dramatic or tragic, that I could do chapters. So I thought, now what will I do? So I've already written about 60 pages before I got onto this last one. I wasn't going to do the minor. Well, they took, invited me up there to have a talk about it, and I thought, you just get tempted, don't you? Well, life has not been dull. There's not going to be enough years to do all the things I want to do. I want to learn more, but I'm lucky because I've got hobbies that I can still do. If I'd been a lady bowler or something that required a lot of activity, I'd have been very upset about it, But I could still paint, I could still draw or write,
Wings Over the Goldfields, a 50-year history of the Royal Flying Doctor Service, has just been released. As Norma King explained, she is presently writing the history of the Kalgoorlie Miner newspaper. For someone who reared 9 children while pursuing a successful writing and painting career, Norma King is an example to all women and should be commended.
A young fellow said to me once, a young friend of mine who was a writer, he said, Norma, I can just see you when you're outside the pearly gates, you'll be saying, wait a minute, I've just got to finish this sentence, or wait a minute, I've just got to finish this painting. I said, probably will be.
This feature was written, produced and recorded by Louise Madden on location in Kalgoorlie and in the audio studios of Murdoch University. A special thanks go to Norma King.